there's really 5 things that you have to prepare for. There's sort of 5 big things you have to prepare for when you are planning an offshore passage. Number 1 is water is supposed to stay outside the boat. And so what do you do if water is inside the boat? What happens if you get a hole? And some of those decisions, some of the what ifs, what we did, those started way back in the design discussions. There are multiple bulkheads that separate the sections of the boat from each other that that water can't get in between. And the same stuff that's in those sort of vests that you would use for flotation devices, the life vests, in the forward and aft sections of the boat, there's big chunks of that. And so even if the boat gets a hole in it, the design is such that it shouldn't sink, that it can actually stay floating even though it has a hole. And so, but then of course we have repair materials and things like that for fixing holes on the boat, for plugging holes. We could handle most of those situations. The fact that the designer of the boat is on board is helpful, I think, too. So that's sort of the worst thing. And then there's other issues that can happen as well. There's what happens if the mast breaks? What happens if a crew member gets sick? Food poisoning or some other major ailment. Like, what do you do for that? And what do you do in a scenario where the electronics fail on the boat? You get hit by lightning and the electronics fail on the boat. And so each one of those questions has a set of answers and a set of backups and a set of contingencies. And then ultimately at the very end of that, we have satellite communications to ask for help. And we're going to be sailing in an area where there's other sailboats. So those are sort of the way we think about it. It really, emergencies in sailboats, what you want to think about is how to keep them from happening before they're an emergency. And one of the sort of primary things that you think about is you don't let issues cascade. If you find a small problem, fix it while it's a small problem. Don't let it cascade into bigger and bigger issues. If there's a problem with the boat, if there's a part that you need, wait for it before you leave dock, even if you're under pressure to get somewhere on time. And then another thing is just make sure all the crew get enough rest. Make sure that everybody's well rested and making good decisions and is thoughtful. And so that's sort of how we approach this idea of what do you do when things go wrong. The best answer is keep them from going wrong in the first place.